all Twin Cities, and all across Minnesota. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jeffrey Asamoah with Thrivedge Solutions. I'm a business consultant and a credit specialist. But today I'm joined by Christy Thompson of Christy Legal. Now, she's a highly experienced paralegal and mediator in the divorce and child custody. So, Christy, go ahead and say hello to our viewers.
Hello, Minnesota. It is so good to be with you tonight.
Hi. Cool. So today, our session today is it's a little bit, well, it's not off topic. It's not just some random thing out of the blue, but it's something that's be just catching my eye lately. So at the end, our beloved Timberwolves star, right? He's been trending lately for different things. He's not just been trending for just being out there and just being good on the court, but apparently off the court, there's been a few different things as well that I want to hear a little bit about, and I kind of want to hear what you got to say about this. So recently, he was he went viral with this whole child support case, right? So again, I just want to hear from you on that. Have you heard about that? What have you looked into about that? And whatever you can share with us, uh, me and anybody else listening, I'm sure we want to hear a little bit about that.
Awesome. Okay. So it was actually really difficult to find information about this because the California and the Georgia state courts their information is not easily accessible like it is in Minnesota. In Minnesota, you just go to mncourts.gov, go to access case records, and man, you can find out all sorts of great stuff. But that's not how it is in Georgia and California. So I did all sorts of Googling.
So quick question today. Why Georgia and California? How do those two factor in to
Thank you. So, California, because that is where the child's mom, Ayesha Howard lives. And then Georgia, because that is Anthony Edwards' state residence. Another reason that he wants to venue the case in Georgia is my understanding is that the child support laws are a little better in Georgia than California. And so, like, a little few facts about the case is, Aunt Edwards, he is 24, and then Aisha is 39. And so Aunt Edwards, he has it's either 4 or 5 children now, and 1 or 2 of them are with his girlfriend, Shannon, who he's been with since 2020, and then, but the child in question, Aubrey, was born in 24 when he was also dating Aisha Howard. So, let's just move past that. Let's
Alright.
get past that. And there are child support cases for him for a couple of the other kids too, but we're just talking about Aubrey today. Because otherwise, it'd be like too much. And so what happened is Aisha and Aunt were dating, and then she became pregnant, and there's like, rumors of what happened after that, but the simplest story is they stopped dating. And then in September of 2024, right before Aubrey was born, Aunt filed a paternity case in Georgia. That is the state he's, claiming is his residence. He must have a residence there because otherwise the Georgia court couldn't have jurisdiction over him. And then the child was born in October of 2024. And again, the child is named Aubrey. And then in December in Georgia, and filed a paternity case because he wanted to make sure that the child is in fact his child. And, every man who isn't sure if the child is his child can file a paternity test case. And there was a paternity test done, and he's the dad. And then in February 2025, Anthony Edwards filed a court case again in Georgia. saying that, he doesn't want any child custody rights. He doesn't want any parenting time. He just wants to pay child support. I mean, yeah, it is sad because, children do need both a mom and a dad and, or, both parents. And, but you can't make anybody be a dad. So, and that's his choice. That's what he said in the court documents. And so, there's a temporary child custody order that gives Ayesha Howard like sole physical and legal custody of the child. And so the child support's the thing that's in contention. And um, so right now, they're still fighting over if the case is going to be venued in California or Georgia. Probably it's going to end up venued in Georgia because so in early 2025, Ayesha also filed a child custody and parenting time case in California because that's where she lives. But Anthony Edwards filed a motion in that case to get it dismissed because he said, he has no ties to California. And which Ayesha Howard says, yes, he owns real estate and he owns a couple businesses. But apparently, the judge believed him because the judge ruled for him. And that child custody and parenting time case in California was dismissed. So that's where that is. So as of this moment, the child custody and parenting time case is venued in Georgia. And so there's a rumor that he tried to pay, the child support up front. And, neither of them say that's true. So that's not true. And
That was literally what was the whole hype was all about. The whole viralness had to do with
it, right. And, maybe Aisha's people even put that out there originally, to create some like negative publicity for him. Hard to say. I mean, it could just be anybody who put it out there. But yeah, it's not true. But what is true is that, he's been saying like she's a gold digger and trying to use the child to get money.
right?
And so because of that, now in addition to, wanting child support, now she is suing him for defamation. And she wants $500,000 upfront, financial support for herself for life, an apology,
Okay.
and him deleting his negative social media content and writing content that is favorable towards her being a positive mom.
Interesting. Interesting. I wonder if he's actually going to do all that. He don't seem like the type that would, at least at this stage of life. He
Right.
don't seem like it, but
Yeah. And there isn't precedent to create, to like, there's no precedent for this to be like, yep, he's going to have to do that. And he's going to have to do that. Yeah. There's no precedent for any of it. Defamation suits are, very difficult to prove. We might not even have a verdict on that one for like years. But so, back to the child support. So as of now, it's venued in Georgia, and I don't know what the laws are in Georgia. However, in Minnesota, how it works is there is a child support calculator, and you can just Google Minnesota child support calculator, and it'll pop up. And you do need some legal help to interpret the child support calculator properly. Because if you don't put the right numbers in, you're not going to get the right result. And, that's part of the services that I provide for people. And what's taken into consideration for child support, and this part is probably extremely similar in Georgia or in California for that matter, is how much each person earns how much parenting time each person has, which for Anthony Edwards would be 0. Um, what is the medical and dental insurance, premium payments for the child? How much does childcare cost for the child? Um, what else? And then, also taken into consideration does the payor have more children? And does the recipient of the funds have more children? And those are the main things that are taken into consideration. And then the calculator spits out an amount.
So,
Now, go ahead.
quick question. When you mentioned how the recipient, if the recipient has other children, how does that play in?
Yeah. So, for the recipient, I apologize. Not so much does that play in, but for the payor, it does get taken into consideration if that person is paying child support for other children. So, like in the case of Anthony Edwards, he is paying child support for at least a couple of other children. I don't know how much. I didn't have enough time to look into that. But that, like, say he's paying, I don't know, $5,000 a month per kid for 2 other kids. So $10,000 a month, that will be taken into consideration in the child support calculator. And, I mean, he could be paying child support for more children than that, and it could be more, and it could be less for each child, but that is taken into consideration.
Okay. So does that also include like his income as well too? The more money he makes, potentially the more that he can end up paying.
Yeah, and so that's interesting too because he has all these other child support cases too. So he is also by creating more and more children, he's actually putting himself at risk of paying more per month for the other children too because, when a parent earns more, then it could, then we can revisit the child support amount for those other children.
Okay.
So I mean, he's just really not helping himself. He's not.
Yeah. All right. Not gonna say too much about the man. I don't know. I don't know what the situation is or the whys or whatever it is, but hey, I
Legally and financially, he is
territory.
so
So what?
legally and financially, he is not helping himself.
Gotcha. True that, because yeah, I mean, it technically don't matter how much money you're making. You make a lot of money. We've probably seen cases where people have made lots of money, but end up paying a lot in child support over the years because again, the other party sees that and says, "Hey, you making money. You can afford to take care of me for life, right?
Yeah.
Even though we're never married or anything like that." So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And so, now the thing about it, the calculator is that there the maximum combined parental incomes of both parties that is taken into consideration for the child support is only $20,000 a month. And so Aisha might have income. And then, of course, Anthony has income. And so more than $20,000 normally isn't even put into the equation in Minnesota. Now, for every rule, there are exceptions. And this is where it gets just really convoluted and why, people need attorneys when people aren't willing to be reasonable and just, reach an agreement on their own.
you're
And so this is in Minnesota statute section 518A.43. And so one of the situations in which they will actually take into consideration more than $20,000 of both parties' monthly income is if a child has a disability, because then the child will have more needs. And then the other reason is like really a lot. It's other substantial demonstrated need for additional support. And yeah, and there are a bunch of laws on that too. And so in section, there's like it's a lot. It says that like all the each parent's income and real estate, property and personal property can all be taken into consideration when determining the parties' incomes. And that the extraordinary financial needs and resources, physical and emotional condition, and educational needs of the child are taken into consideration. So, like, what is this extraordinary financial needs?
Yeah.
Like, okay,
Mhm.
does that mean that the child needs silk sheets? Like, okay. And then, like, number 3 is even, like, worse because it says the standard of living that the child would enjoy if the parents were currently living together, but recognizing that the parents now have separate households. So that one there is where I'm like, "Ooh, okay, wait a minute. Maybe there's not really a cap on how much income is taken into consideration here." Because if we go, okay, well, I mean, if Anthony Edwards and Ayesha Howard live together, wow, what would be the lifestyle of that child?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that is like, oh boy. And let's see. And then there are a couple of other things that aren't really applicable. But there are other, reasons where that general 20,000 of parental income can be increased.
Okay.
And so people who earn a lot of income, beware. There are possibilities that it can be increased. One good thing to know
Mhm.
is that when you're determining someone's income, and this is in the state of Minnesota, that the gross income does not include your overtime if it's not part of your regular job description. So, like for instance, my fiance is a manager and he works more than 40 hours a week, but that's just part of his regular job description. And so, if he were paying child support, then he would have to use his entire income for the child support calculator because it's just expected for him to work more than 40 hours a week.
Okay.
But, somebody like, say I was working for an employer and $30 an hour, but I also, for the first 40 hours and then after that, it's time and a half. So, just the first 40 hours is what the child support would be based on. However, if you are working that overtime before the divorce case starts or the child custody and parenting time or child support case starts, then that overtime is taken into consideration. However, if you start working the overtime after either of those types of cases is filed, then it is not taken into consideration for the child support amount. So that's good to know. So, uh, if you earn over, $20,000 a month, the moral of the story is, actually, the moral of the Christie Legal story is always the most important decisions that you will ever make are who you have a child with and who you marry. Those decisions will affect every part of your life, especially the child, because you can't divorce your child's other parent. You're stuck with them forever. And so, if you earn more than 20,000 a month, or honestly even more than 15,000 a month, depending on how a court interprets that lovely statute, you could have more than, $20,000 of income taken into consideration for the child support payment. And when you're in that situation, definitely seek legal counsel and definitely expect the case to take a while.
So let's say somebody's a business owner. How does that factor in? Does that factor in based on if they're paying themselves or how much they paying themselves? Because I think I've heard of situations where somebody will quote unquote hide their money in the business where it's almost like, hey, I don't work a regular job. I run a business. So it's like everything's kind of hidden. How does that play in for me? So
That's a great question. And actually, that is part of the reason that we have this except when is because of how people try to hide their money when it comes to paying child support. I don't think people do it nearly as much as, back in the day. Because, the court system is more savvy now and, knows how to figure these things out. But that is one of the things that the Minnesota statutes talks about. Let's see, which statute is that under? So in 518A.29, calculation of gross income, and gross income is what is used to determine, the amount that is put into the child support
gross
account.
is not the net.
No, it is gross income. Yep, for everybody, it is gross income. Yeah, so you might, be paid $10,000 a month, but you have like, $4,000 in taxes and then, $2,000 in this and that and the other thing. Yeah,
There, dang.
yep. And so the business owner thing in 518A.29, so it says, let's see, darn it. I had it here. Now I lost it. Okay, maybe it's in this other one here. Hmm. All right. All right, I cannot find it now. However, there was a part in here that talked about when you're a business owner that, basically you can't just oh, here we go. Yeah, I am not finding it now, but there is a provision in one of the statutes that I read today that basically prevents people from paying themselves $1,000 a month and being like, "Yeah, that's how much I earn." Meanwhile, like, having their business, like, pay for their car payment and, like, pay for this and that and the other thing. So they're really living off of a lot more money than they're acknowledging. And
Right. Is there situations where maybe the business is not just in your name or business is somebody else's name, but it's still somehow only, let's say the individual is married, right? Let's say you end up having a child with somebody, but then later on you get married and down the line there's a reassessment of, child support and all that. But now you've got a business somehow, but maybe it's not in your name. But within the household, right? There's income coming in. So I'm trying to like, how does that all play in? That's part of too what it looks like hidden. Or so that's one scenario. Then you got scenarios where it looks like people will quit their job, quote unquote. I got fired from my job, find some lower paying job just for child support purposes. Once everything is clear, then they might go back to look for a better job or some. So it just seems like there are ways that people have this concept of I can hide from this. I don't want to give this woman or this man extra money or whatever the case is. So that's was one of the things I kind of want some more clarity on too, because I know folks will want to hear about that too.
okay. So, like, the first one so if the payor of the child support isn't an actual owner of the business, then that wouldn't be applicable, even if the spouse is an owner,
Mm,
that's the spouse's business.
okay,
And so when you're calculating child support, you're only using the payor's income.
it's not a household income.
Right. Right. Which is, like really beneficial to a lot of people because, they might be the lesser earning spouse.
Mm.
And yes, like maybe they are purposely the lesser earning spouse, or maybe they are purposely not the owner of the business. But we can't legislate morality. So Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, there are technically still some loopholes there. But situation number 2, when dad just, like, goes and gets a lower paying job, oh, that will be, like, stopped because there is something called imputing income.
Okay.
And so the court can impute or give to that payor a certain amount in income based on what the person used to earn. So, like, if the person got fired, I don't know, uh, like, for any number of reasons, the person actually got fired and, like and the person wasn't just trying to get fired. They got fired, like, not on purpose.
Mhm.
Then the court will be like, "Hey, you used to earn $5,000 a month. We are giving you child support based on you earning $5,000 a month. So I suggest you make $5,000 a month." Um, so, back in the day, people used to do that dumb stuff a lot more, and the court got smart. And so now the court's like, "Oh, no. Oh,
Yeah.
no. You are not pulling the wool over our eyes anymore." And yeah, so the court will just be like, "Oh, hey, you used to earn that much, and this is how much you are capable of earning. You just are deciding not to earn that."
Wow. So what if the person decides they want to go to school to improve their finances? So they were earning some decent amount. They leave that job to get a lower paying job so they can get into school full time, right? How do you prove that they were not doing that because they really want to improve themselves versus, hey, I know the system, I'm trying to hide under the radar while still benefiting myself, quote unquote, at the same time? Will the courts basically say something like, okay, that's cool, but once you're done with school, you get your job, or revisit everything, or how is that playing?
Nope. Nope. If they quit a job or if they, like, reduce their hours at a job, it's just like, nope, you could be earning that much money. So, if someone who's paying child support wants to go to school, they're going to have to plan that, not only are they going to have to, pay their expenses like that they already have and, possibly pay for part of the tuition. They are, also gonna have to pay, the child support at the current amount. Yeah. Because the needs of the child haven't changed at all,
Gotcha. Gotcha. Hmm.
and the standard of living that the child, you know, has been used to hasn't changed. Basically, the court's saying, "Well, that's great that you wanna change, but your child doesn't suffer, while you're changing. So, figure it out."
So like, how does that affect the person being paid? Does that individual, if what if that individual also does a similar thing? Because from what you mentioned with the Anthony Edwards case, right? It's based also on Aisha, how much she's also maybe earning, right?
Yeah.
All those stuff. So what if the woman in this case decides similar thing? I'm just going to get a lower paying job, or I'm going to get fired, or I'm going to go to school. I'm going to figure a way to better myself while appearing that I make less so I can get more. How does that play in?
Yeah, yeah, that will be taken into consideration too. And as a matter of fact, I worked on some cases where the wife was working part-time, like 32 hours a week a lot. And so sometimes 32-hour week jobs are FTE or full-time equivalent. And in that manner, then, a judge wouldn't impute, income because like especially like with nurses and some other professionals, that's just full-time for them. But, there are people who are just working part-time because their income was secondary. But when they, go to court for divorce or child custody, it's like, "No, you could work full-time." So, we're gonna take that hourly wage and we're gonna make that 40 hours instead of 32. And, like, if it's a business, it's way more complicated to figure that out. But, yeah, it works both ways.
Okay.
And so that's why, some, usually men, will contact me and they'll be like, "I wanna get my child support reduced." It's not like
Mhm.
eh, at all my favorite thing to do at all. But, like, there aren't a lot of ways to get your child support reduced. It's like you have to be earning, considerably less money, and it's not because you quit. And then the other parent is earning significantly more money. One of the kids is 18 and graduated from high school, or, the medical and dental insurance premiums have, either gone away, or have or less. So there really aren't a lot of, just my expenses have increased.
No.
Everybody's expenses have increased. So hello. So if your child's other parent, her or his expenses have increased too. So it's like, okay, let's think about this. Yeah. Let's take money away from that person whose expenses are also going up. So, yeah.
Wow. All right. It's good to know.
And you're like, I never want to have to deal with this ever.
No, not for me. We'll talk a little bit more about that because some other questions that I think will lead to a whole nother segment that we can definitely talk about, on our next time. Any last words you want to drop in?
Anthony Edwards is an amazing basketball player.
Mm. Yes.
Not there.
Hands down, he is. Yep. And again, we just wish him the best of luck on how he handles his affairs. I think
Yep.
that's that. We just hope that folks, as again, he's a young man,
He's
right? Young man. So hopefully, as time goes, he's maturing and learning and figuring things out. Because early on, if you get caught up in this type of lifestyle, it's just for anybody, right? You realize that it does play into things, especially when you get older. You look back. He said, man, what was I thinking? What was I doing? Right? I could have done things differently and done things better. Again, we all know his mindset, but wish him the best of luck and all of that. And Christy, man, thank you. Folks, man, if you're in situations similar to this or any type of legal situation as it pertains to child support and, family custody, child custody and all that, you got to connect with Christy Legal. Got to connect with Christy. All right. So tune in for next times because we got more things coming. So, Minnesota, good morning and good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you're watching from, and whatever time it is. We will see you again on another session. Bye for now.